All right, team. Good afternoon. Another early version of the video. We aren't as busy these days, us mortgage guys. And while that's a good thing on many fronts, I definitely need to take a walk or two around the block. You know what I mean? But a lot of people say, they watch the channel, they reach out to me, and I thought you might be too busy. I'm not too busy. That's what I'm here for. I'm here to help. Here for you to ask questions. Not too busy. Definitely not too busy at this point. So if you want to buy or refi, give me a call, shoot me a text, send me an email. Let's connect. Get you a custom quote. All right. Today's video is very simple. It is my opinion. I'm not saying that the real estate market couldn't crash or can never crash again, or that real estate prices can't go down. They definitely can. But what I'm going to show you is a very clear and concise comparison, specifically with 2008. And through that, we can really understand the healthiness, if that's a word, of the market in comparison. Now, the reason why 2008 is a great example to use is, number one, I lived through it. I experienced it. I remember it very clearly. We have lots of data from back then. It's relatively recent. And it was literally a worst case scenario. So literally a worst case scenario for real estate, global economic collapse caused by American real estate. So we can literally say it was the worst case scenario. So if we can compare where we're at today to what was a known worst case scenario, that should help give us some kind of gauge as to how far away we are from, let's call it a worst case scenario. Okay? And I'm going to show you a bunch of information, and I'm going to share with you a bunch of my experience. And so we're going to go through all this stuff together. And I do want to start by just giving you a quick history, because I started the mortgage business in 1999, and I actually got out of the mortgage business right before the crash. That's right. I nailed it. Now, this is not a victory. Okay, this is kind of a victory lap. I got out right before the crash because I saw it coming, okay? And things like this you can see coming. And I got out and I decided to pursue my dream in media, my childhood dream to do a radio show for a living, and I did it. And I did it for almost a decade. And so I'm very proud of that. But I left the business. That's how bad it was. Now, I got back into the business in 2019. Pretty good timing, eh? Now, I'm not victory lapping my moves, but when someone changes careers, that is a big move to make. That's not like buying or selling a stock. That's not clicking a few buttons. That's life changes, family, everything. So I guess my point in saying this is, if I make an announcement online that I am leaving the mortgage business,
check, please.
That is when you will know the crash is coming, okay? And I'm not going anywhere. In fact,
all we want to do is pump you up.
I'm here to spray truth, and I'm bringing a fire hose. And there's a whole bunch of naysayers on both sides, and everyone gets to shut up for a second and actually listen to facts and actual experience. So let's talk about that for a second. Okay. So you'll know the crash is really coming when I leave the business again. Okay, where should we start? Where do we begin? Okay, well, this is how I kind of laid it out. All right, we're going to look at 5 basic things here. Oops, let me get some stuff off the screen. One-man production here. Okay. Hi, Sarah. What's up? So 2008 versus now. Let's take a close look at this. And I really want to go into these things. I'm going to show you data for each one of these things. And I'm also going to give you my opinion, my experience, what I'm feeling, what I felt back then, what I'm feeling, what I'm seeing right now. Okay. So 2008 demand. Now I started with demand on this instead of supply. I normally start with supply, right? But I started with demand because that was really how we got a bubble in 2008, was we got fake demand. Okay. Now, what is that? How could you have fake demand, Derrick? What does that mean? How's that possible? Well, the prices in 2008 and all through the early 2000s were driven higher by an increase in demand, not a lack of supply. We'll get to that in a second. Supply was actually increasing. We were building a ton. Building was happening everywhere, okay, in the early 2000s. Even late 90s, but the early 2000s, building went crazy. So, but we combated that, and prices continued to go higher through this huge increase in demand. We had massive, massive demand, but what demand back then came from absolute corruption, okay? What happened was Wall Street figured out how to buy off the ratings agencies, okay, the bond ratings agencies. They figured out how to pay them off so that they could bring them any kind of mortgage paper, put it into the system, and the ratings agencies would spit out a AAA rating. So because they were able to do that and package up all this debt and go sell it to Iceland, remember Iceland almost went bankrupt? Some of the most conservative, wisest people over there. The people who wanted to make investments in the safest possible thing were buying this crappy paper, which was built off of fake demand. Okay, so they would basically saying, hey, if you could just get us a mortgage that has an American address on it, we can package it up and sell it to somebody as a AAA rated bond, because they had bought off the rating agencies. So they were just taking anything. That's why we had all these crazy loans. That's why you had NAGAM loans, why you had 100% loans. They were willing to give anyone a loan because no one was double checking it. The checkpoint, the check and balance was compromised. And that is why we saw prices go up. So we had fake demand, okay? And while it was a lot, it was definitely there, but it was fake, false. And that caused a lot of bleed over problems. Today, if we look at demand is super strong, right? I mean, like on a scale of 1 to 10, I would say we're at like 10.2. Demand is crazy. Now, this is being impacted by interest rates. And I don't have interest rates on here, and I know some people are going to say, why aren't you going to talk about interest? I am. It bleeds into all this. Demand is significant. Everyone wants to own a home. There are people who can't afford to own a home. There's people who really are trying to buy homes, but they just can't get the paperwork together yet, or they don't have enough documentation. The demand right now is extreme, and it should only increase. Let's bring up Exhibit A. You've seen me talk about this chart before. It's very simple. People tend to buy homes at the first-time home buyer age is 33. This graph pretty much predicts every move in real estate. I'm not going to take the time to validate that. You can take these and you can go do it if you want to, but I've done it. And basically what you see is, this is 33-year-olds today. How many years ago was the crash? Well, if today is 2022, then that means the crash was 14 years ago. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, right there. So what did that tell you? This is when the market crashed. When the number of people turning 33 reached a bottoming point, that is when the market crashed. What has been happening ever since? Prices have been going up, right? Look what else has been happening. Number of people turning 33 has been increasing. Notice also that the number of people turning 33 is increasing for now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more years. And then the following couple of years is going to be the same as where it is today. So if this is any indicator of demand, which it surely has been, especially in the last 20 years, you're going to see here that we have an increasing demand. We have an increasing demand. We have an increasing number of households. We have an increasing number of people who want to buy or who are at the first-time buyer age. This is very, very bullish for real estate, okay? So if we just look at demand, right now, we have really solid, traditional, normal demand. Back then, let me just reiterate this, back in 2008, demand was falling off a cliff. So they've built false demand through the corruption in the ratings agencies via Wall Street. Okay, so demand wasn't really there. They manufactured it through fake loans and through bad paper that was falsified. All right, so that's what happened. So today we have incredible demand, which is the demand. When we say demand, we mean people who want to own real estate, people who are trying to buy real estate, people who are in a position to buy real estate. Not just, hey, you pulling people off the side of the street. Everyone wants to own real estate. Of course they do. But right now, demand is very, very good. Very, very, very good. And it's being challenged. It's being put to the test right now by interest rates going up. But people still want to buy real estate. They still want to buy. Even I haven't had anyone go, you know what, we're out. I've just seen people go, okay, well, I still need to keep my payment at this level. So that means I need to change what I'm looking at. But I haven't seen a huge exodus of buyers at this point who are just running to renting. I'm going to talk about renting in a second. All right. Now let's talk about supply. Now, back in 2008, we've got some good data on this. Back in 2008, we had almost record inventory levels. Like right here, pretty much almost record national inventory levels. And look what's happened since. And now it's down here. This is actually a little bit old. Now it's down here. But one of the things you notice, even back in 2020, we have 12 million more households. We have 3 million less homes for sale and 12 million more households. So inventory, and part of the reason why this is important to understand is because this inventory crisis is actually created by the crash. The crash caused a tremendous lack and reduction in new home construction. New home builders went out of business. The ones who stuck around had to be very cautious, and so they weren't able to just do all these huge projects and build all this inventory. It took years, and it's going to take us years and years and years to recover from this. Okay, so we have a very, very slim inventory scenario right now, which is our supply. So we have a very little supply. So in 2008, we had a lot of supply. We had a ton. We had almost a record levels. We had, let's call it, I'm just going to make up words here on the fly because this is hard to kind of draw with this. I'm embarrassed to tell you how long it took me to write all these words right here. We're just going to call it lotso. We had a lot of supply, almost record levels. Today, what do we have? What word would you use? I'm going to call it nada. Okay? We have such a small amount of supply. It's wild. And our new supply coming on is very, very small as well. We have such a small amount of supply. So we can look at the data here and we can see these are facts, all right? Like this isn't my opinion. My opinion is built on top of this data. So I don't have an opinion that I'm trying to figure out. I want to know what's going on with the market. I don't want to lie to myself. I'm in this business. If there's a problem, I need to do something about it. If there isn't, then I need to let people know to chill. And that's what I'm doing right now. So let's talk about lending now. For those of you who don't know, I was in lending at that time and obviously in lending today. And back then, anyone could, and this is where the fake demand comes in, right? That's where this came from. The fake demand came from extremely loose lending. So we had, crazy loans. You didn't need to have income. You could be self-employed. You didn't have to provide tax returns. You could do stated income loans where you just literally said, here's how much I make, and put it on the application. It was never verified, never double checked, never checked against tax returns, didn't even check your bank statements to see if you even had that much gross coming in. They just took your word for it. This is true. Some of the people who are younger, who are in the business right now, you don't know, like this sounds like a fairy tale or something. It's true. People were given loans for just about anything. And it was all about fueling that fake demand that was needed to satisfy the Wall Street sales guys who were selling these bonds all over the place. So we had a very loose lending environment. Today we have what I would call a normal, I'm not going to write this out because it'll take too long. I would call it normal to tight underwriting. I mean, back then you would do ARMs, 100%, 80/20s. I can't tell you the last time I did something other than a 30-year fixed or a 20-year fixed or a 15-year fixed. Full doc, fully underwritten tax returns or W-2s, bank statements, just all up in there. Like absolutely no exceptions. Back here in this day, and the reason why I knew this, I didn't know there was a crash coming. I didn't know how bad it would be. I just knew that something was not right. Back then, we could get in an exception on anything. If we had someone in underwriting and it turned out, oh, hey, they don't meet this guideline, we would just call the account executive and say, hey, can you make an exception? And they would go, yeah, sure, and give us a loan. There is no way in hell to do anything like that today. No way in hell. So you today are seeing actual lending take place with people who are actually qualified. And by the way, most of the people who are buying houses can't even do it unless they have enough cash on hand to cover an appraisal gap. So like I said, my concern more than anything is really just that only rich people will be able to buy houses, not that house prices are going to go down. And that's a much greater concern. But this is where everyone's focused right now. This is where all my questions are coming from. So this is what we're going to talk about. Now, so you can kind of see how this is adding up, right? This is all factual stuff. Let's talk about rents. Does anyone remember what rents were like back then? I've got a couple of graphs on rents, I believe. Let's see here. Here's one. This one's decent. It shows, it shows the three different ones. It shows you San Diego, California, and then it shows you national. You can see how San Diego's really, the trajectory is pretty significant there. But it just kind of shows you, hey, things in 2020 got a little weird or kind of flat, whatever, and then since then just skyrocketing. And I expect that to continue for some time now. But if we were to go back further on the timeline, oh, please tell me I put this in here. No, there's another supply graph I should have showed you, which I will come back to. That it? House prices. Oh, maybe it's over here. Okay. So this one, they wanted me to pay for something or whatever, so I didn't do it. But you can see rents have been trending higher for quite some time, and they really, really, really spiked here in recent history. Oh, that's right. They wouldn't let me go back because I have to pay for this. Anyway, okay. So going back to just back then, everyone was a homeowner. So rents were super low, really low, crazy low. In fact, I remember not buying a house in Escala, which would have turned out to be a great investment, for I think $600,000 or somewhere in that range. Escala, Mission Valley, with very their standard 3-level, 3-bed, 2.5 bath, I think, with an office floor plan and a 2-car garage. It was like 600 something, and I was looking at the payment and everything, and then I looked just like across the street. There was one for rent for $1,800. It was impossible to find people to rent because everyone could buy because of the loose lending, which was generating the false demand. Rents were super low because no one wanted to rent. Why would you want to rent? Everyone's making tons of money in real estate and no one is locked out. Everyone can get in because of the loose lending. So rents were not just low, but I would even say super low. Rents today, they're at record highs. Okay. So why is that important? Why are we talking about rent? What difference does that make? Well, rent is what the rental prices are versus what it costs to own. So renting versus owning. That is your underlying support for the real estate market, whether you like it or not. Everyone is participating in the real estate market. Everybody. Whether you're renting or whether you're owning, you're participating. Now, if rents are high, what does that do? That causes a lot more people to look at owning, right? Because it makes the alternative to owning not as good. When rents are low, the alternative to owning was really good. And this is the reason why so many people foreclosed. This is the reason right here. If you want to know the answer, this is it. And I had a lot of conversations with people. I was doing my radio show back then. I went through, oh my gosh, we saw so many crazy things. I could tell you some stories, but this is the reason. People were looking at it like, well, I'm upside down, 100,000 already. I didn't put any money into this place. I don't want to make this payment, and I can rent a house down the street for less than what my payment is. So why would I stay? So when the alternative to owning is sexy, that will keep people away from owning. When the alternative to owning sucks, which is where we are today, that makes it a lot more difficult for people to walk away or to continue to rent for long periods of time. It causes people who are sort of like habitually renting, it causes them to really take a hard look at it and go, gosh, is there any way we can stop doing this? The rent just keeps going up, and it's gotten to the point where it's so absurd, I feel like we should be able to own. Okay? So right now, rent's super high. That's a good foundation. That's a good support mechanism for the real estate market. All right. Are you seeing how this is adding up now? You see what's going on here? Let's talk about the economy. Okay. And particularly what I mean by the economy, and I probably should have just wrote jobs because there's less letters and it was hard to write this. It's just jobs. How are we doing with jobs? And back here in 2008, the economy was, I would say it was pretty good. It was good. It wasn't great. It wasn't terrible. We can just say, it wasn't, I'd say better than average, right? It was good. It was good. It was fueled a lot by real estate, but it was good. The economy was good heading into, the crash. And so, but the big thing is, and the most important thing is that the banks were unprepared. Okay, this actually doesn't really matter too much. Sorry. The point is that the banks were unprepared. The banks were not prepared for mass foreclosure situations. They were apparently, and this is the only reason I believe them, unaware of all the corruption in Wall Street because they were not ready. So that when people lost their jobs, when it tanked, right, when it really, really fell, people lost their jobs, it took a long time for lawmakers and for banks to really figure out, okay, loan modification, how do we do this? They were just kind of using the status quo procedures to foreclose on people and all that stuff, which was really stupid. And at the time I was on the radio every day going, I can't believe they're doing this. Why are they devaluing their own asset? Why are they foreclosing on properties when they own all these properties? And what we learned here, and this is probably the more important thing, because right now the economy is really good too, but probably the most important thing that we learned here, which was proven through COVID, is that when we have a crisis, what did they do? What did the banks do? Immediately, forbearance. They immediately issued, they were already ready to go. They already learned from the last time, and they said, you know what, the next time this happens, here's what we're going to do. We're going to have these programs in place, and here's the reason they're doing it. They figured out how to make money doing it. When you do forbearance, the bank does make money on it. So they have figured out how to say, hey, we're providing forgiveness, we're being helpful, but really they're making money on it. And the good news is that it helps support real estate value. So they're saying, hey, don't make your payment, we'll tack it on the end of your loan, which means you're going to pay interest on the interest that you owe over the course of 30 years, which is a really bad deal for you. But it makes them look like the good guy, and it helps retain the value of their asset. They're never, ever, 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 ever again going to foreclose on homes the way that they did back in the day. It's not going to happen. If there is a problem, and I had several people on the YouTube comments, saying this yesterday or the day before, hey, well, what if there's a recession that comes and people start losing their jobs? Okay. Well, that's possible, but we know that we have this figured out because we had COVID happen and a lot of people lost their jobs. And what happened to real estate? Does anybody remember? Oh, let me see if I can find that chart. Okay. Here's the chart. Tons of people lost their jobs in COVID right there. Ink. And then what happened? Boom. So this is the Great Recession right here, the crash of 2008, where you see less than 25% was the dip. The dip was 25% or less from top to bottom if you bought at the absolute worst time, okay? And all it did was just return us to this trend line here. That's all it did, was just take us back down to that trend line and then consolidate. Remember, I've been talking about that lately. That's a very likely, consolidate, but just means normalize. Normalize, this is the new price range that people think real estate should be in right here, okay? Normalize, go sideways. You see this happen from time to time, and usually with real estate and with everything else, it continues going the direction it came from, which in this case is higher. Shoot, didn't mean to do that. So, when we have a consolidation like this, what happens next? Up. What happened here? Consolidation, right? This is new normalization of prices right there in that range. And then what happens next? Higher. That's one of the reasons I believe that that's probably what's going to happen right now. But I'm not going to get to that. I just want to show you that this is what happened. Okay. And now look at this. I talked about this in my last video. We have 5 million more job openings than unemployed people in the U.S. We did not have a situation like that in 2008. Okay. We literally have more job openings than people who are collecting unemployment benefits, or people who are considered to be unemployed. We're going through what's called the Great Resignation. People are quitting their jobs left and right because the job market is so strong. We did not have that in 2008. Okay. In fact, I think he even mentions it right here. Quits. I like how he calls it. Quits increased as the Great Resignation persisted. So that is not the situation that we had in 2008. From an economic standpoint, from a job standpoint, things are the best they've probably ever been. We have runaway inflation, which isn't great. We have a lot of things that are working against us. We have some things that may need to come in. But overall, if you compare the two between 2008 and now, I mean, which world would you rather live in? You know what I mean? Like, the demand side is actually real this time around. Supply, we had a ton back then. Today we have almost nothing, and we're not building enough new stuff. And it's almost impossible to do that. Back then, lending was a joke. It was a joke. I can't believe that we were a bunch of adults doing that. It was a joke. Definitely today, it's legit. In fact, today, it's evolved into something that is way, way cooler, where consumers have way better options and opportunities to capture the market and get good deals on lending. Back then, there was a lot of snake and oil salesmen, a bunch of bad stuff going on. Still some of that going on, not nearly as much. Lending, dramatically better today. Rents, back then, were super low, which meant that the market itself was fragile. That's what low rents means, fragile. Plan B is to rent for every homeowner. Plan A is own, plan B is rent. That should be the case for everyone. And when do things change? Things change when plan B starts to look better than plan A. That goes for anything in your life. Things will change when plan B starts to look better than plan A. And when if plan B is always to rent for every homeowner and that starts to look pretty good, then people are going to get out of Dodge. They're just going to say, see ya.
Check, please.
So right now we have really high rents, and that is helping to support the real estate market in ways that people don't even realize. That you're renting a house for $5,000 a month and you are helping the real estate market. Thank you very much.
Damn!
Oh no, it's true. It's true. And from an economy standpoint, we have a situation where we have millions more jobs than we do people who are unemployed. We didn't have that back then. Things weren't bad back then. They weren't that bad. I mean, leading up to it, the economy was pretty good. Things were moving along. We had a wartime economy. We were at war, right? So the wartime economies are usually pretty good, sadly enough. This time, we don't have that. We have actually not a wartime economy, not an economy that's propped up by war, but an economy that is propped up by innovation and probably inflation, right? Innovation and inflation are really what's propped up this economy. Real estate has definitely been a part of it. But we have an example specifically of, well, what goes wrong? What if things go wrong with the economy? Because that's really the reason I put this on here. What if something goes wrong with the economy? Then what? Well, back then, we weren't prepared. Now we're prepared. We know how to avoid a crash. COVID situation was absolutely ripe for real estate crash. I don't blame anyone who thought that it was going to happen for predicting that. I don't, because everything pointed towards that. But what it was a perfect practice round for us to see that banks know what they're doing now, and they're not going to blow it this time. Banks blew it last time. We do not have that situation going on now, team. They know exactly what to do to prevent losses, to protect their investment, to keep real estate prices from plummeting as a result of their actions, and they are the ones who hold the cards. If people default, who owns the homes? The banks. So it is in their hands. And I can tell you this, they are not going to shoot themselves in the foot again. Not going to happen. So this is why right now I'm telling you the real estate market is not going to crash like 2008. I guarantee that. Guarantee that. Now, does that mean that prices can't go lower? No, it doesn't mean that. Does that mean that a correction isn't possible? No, it doesn't mean that at all. That's also possible. We could see prices go down 5, 10%. That could happen because interest rates are playing a role here. And I've been very vocal about where I told you interest rates were going. They're going to go there, by the way. They have been so far, and they will. They'll get there. They're going to continue to go up, and we need to see how this affects the real estate market. But interest rates going up does not crash a real estate market. What crashes a market is when you have a significant shift in the supply-demand equation. You have to have a significant shift, which means we'd have to have a dramatic. Right now we have tons of demand. We have a significant lack of supply that is really generational lack of supply. I mean, a decade or two worth of trying to rapidly catch up to get caught up. I mean, we have a significant lack of supply. So we need these things would both need to change drastically. So in other words, we would need to see a huge drop in demand, and we would need to see a huge increase in supply very rapidly in order for us to have a crash scenario. Now, we're seeing some demand is being tested right now by interest rates, and I think interest rates going up should slow the market down and cause a consolidation, maybe even a slightly, maybe if this is our current real estate trajectory right here, I was talking about the other day, hey, maybe we go sideways like this, or maybe we pull back a little bit and then go sideways as we consolidate and normalize a new price range based on interest rates. And I think that is probably what will happen until we get to a point where inflation is under control, rates can be lowered again, and then we take the next leg higher. And if you look back at the real estate chart, tell me that's not exactly what's happened like every single time. This is what we were looking at earlier. Upward movement, consolidation, right? Here we had the crash and then the consolidation. Here we just had the consolidation and then went higher. Can I zoom in on that? Let me get myself out of the way. I think I can zoom in. Yeah, I should be able to zoom in on this. Okay, so here's where we are today. So consolidate. This is the crash, right? This right here is the crash. We ran up, pulled back, consolidated sideways, and then shot higher. Once we got up to this point, we consolidated again, and then shot higher. And that's what we've been doing. So I think both of those situations are possible. We could just go sideways, and there's going to be opportunities in there. Like you can see in there, there's like 5% pullbacks, 5% up, 5% pullbacks, 3% up, 2% down, 3% up, 2% back, and then massive run. So like there's opportunities in there. Okay, in those consolidations, you're going to see like prices might come down, and then that's where people who are going to jump on opportunities and take advantage of things, that's where they're going to grab it. If we have a pullback, I don't think we're going to see one like the great crash. I just explained why, but maybe we have one that's kind of like this, where they see a 5% pullback as we're consolidating in the range, and then we see things move higher. That also is possible. There was one more graph I didn't get to show you that I really want to show you. Okay, supply of homes for sale. So this is kind of just to piggyback the one that we showed you earlier. This is from the Fed, so we don't have to trust Steve Harney. But you can see here we had a very normalized amount of supply in the housing market in the early 2000s. And then all of a sudden, because real estate started catching on as a really good investment, you see the supply just go crazy. I mean, we went on a building frenzy, okay? Crazy. And that obviously was a big problem. Okay, because we had all the supply coming into the market, and it was all based on this idea of false demand, which we explained earlier. So you have this huge increase of supply, and you have this very, very weak false demand, which also had a tremendously good plan B option, which a lot of people opted in for, and I can't say I blame for it. So we are nowhere near in the same boat that we were in 2008. Sorry, I'm kind of all over the place with this. There's just so much to say, and I just keep getting these questions. And the fact that so many people are worried about a crash also means that it's pretty much impossible for a crash to happen. Back here in 2008, no one was worried about a crash except for a few bow tie guys. I remember sitting through on public TV. Remember, this is back in like 2006 or 7. I remember watching public television. This is long before, I think Netflix was still on CDs back then, if they even existed. watching this economist at USD do a presentation and talk about how there's a real estate bubble forming that would eventually explode and cause major problems. And I remember watching him going, who is this idiot? How does he not have any idea what's going on? No one thought a crash could happen. And that's when crashes happen. When you have half the people worried about a crash, crashes cannot happen. Crashes can only happen once everybody's in, and then the rug pull. If half the people aren't in yet, they provide backup because they're the people who will come in if things do retrace. And that's true for any kind of security, any kind of investment. So you can kind of count it like until everyone is in on something. Remember the very top of Bitcoin, the most recent cycle high? What happened the day before we hit that high? Tom Brady tweeted out laser eyes, BTC to 100K or something like that. You need everybody in before you can get pullbacks. With so many people being cautious, it helps protect it. So we've got as much protection as we could possibly have. Yes, we have interest rates to deal with. I'm not ignoring that. I'm the one talking about that every day. We need to see how that impacts things, and it's going to take months for us to see that. Will we have a pullback or will we just go sideways? Either way, I think there's going to be opportunities created because of this. And here's another thing too. With interest rates, you can almost count on this, that interest rates between 3 and 4 years from now, at some point in that next 4 years, let's say, we will see, 2 something, 3 something interest rates again. Inflation goes bye-bye. People start buying mortgage bonds again. All that normalizes. You see 2-3% interest rates again. There's going to be a huge refi boom in 3 or 4 years from now, where everyone who's getting 5 something today and the people who get 5s and 6s, they're all going to have a chance to refinance. So the next 2-3 years of us giving people, rates in those ranges are going to be, accompanied by a huge refinance boom down the road. And so a lot of people who are buying houses today, this is a part of what you need to consider. If you have the chance to get a home at a decent price and a payment that you're okay with now, just know the chances that you'll have an opportunity to lower that in the future are pretty darn good. It's a pretty safe bet. You have your job, keep your credit in good shape. You're going to have a chance to refinance a few years down the road. You can almost count on it. I mean, it's very cyclical with rates, and we have a bad situation right now for rates. So I'm going to leave it at that for now. I just want everyone to know what's really going on here. There's clearly a lot happening in the world, but it's true. In the mortgage business, we aren't as busy as we normally are. And everyone who's worried about bothering me, don't be. Reach out. Happy to help you. Let me help you. Let me hook you up with a good mortgage and good service, what I believe everyone deserves. You should not have to choose between a good rate and a good loan officer. Call me, text me, shoot me an email. Let me provide you with a custom quote. You want to get your own quote? You want to find out, hey, what kind of rate could I get in my situation? Happy to help you there. Okay? Let me help you. Help me help you. Call, text, email. You guys have a great day, and I hope this helps. See you soon.